All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys and gals. It is episode 8 of the Law Firm Marketing Mix. This is, we're really getting into it here. I'm joined again today by Brandon Wheeler. So happy to have you here today, Brandon. As I said before, I had a feeling that you were going to be back, and we're going to keep it going. This is interesting. I'm feeling extremely pumped today because I have a brand new setup here. I see you do as well. Are you feeling as sexy as I am?
I'm ready to rock, man. This is new. We're on video.
I know
which is odd, but I think it'll be good. You can get a little like face with the voice, which will be cool.
It is odd. We'll see what happens. I have to applaud you. I think you showed up for work a little more prepared than I did today. I'm not exactly business casual. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm normally in a polo or a t-shirt as well. So I figured, since I was going to be on film, today would be the day I could actually dust off one of my button downs.
It's all good, man. I think the last time I saw you in person was probably the last time I wore a button up. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know you had some stuff you wanted to talk about today. Last time we tackled reviews. If you haven't checked that out, I encourage any listener out there to check out the pod from last week, or actually this week rather. Pretty lively conversation that we had about all things reviews. And the week previous, we actually talked about intake for law firms. So in particular, if you're a PI firm or you're working for criminal defense or family law or anything of that nature, I would highly suggest that you check that out. Just by way of introduction, if folks have not joined the podcast before, I'm Dan Bryan. I am the founder and CEO of Marketing for Justice. And on my 9 to 5, when I'm not pursuing passion projects, I'm running the digital show for a mid-sized personal injury firm out of North Carolina. And we actually do work with Brandon's firm, Wingman Marketing. But anyway, Brandon, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself real quick too, so folks have a sense of who you are, and then we'll get started. We'll dive right into it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, of course, as always. And I'm the co-founder of Wingman Marketing, a digital boutique, if you want to call it that. We're lean, we're small, we're very selective over the clients we take. But
that's why you work with us. We're so special.
100%. Yeah, handpicked for sure.
Oh yeah.
We just like to have a good time and like to have a good relationship. I feel it's so important in today's society to get a group that you really vibe with, a group that you establish trust, you understand the direction you're going, you set clear goals, you hit those goals, you work towards those things together. It's a team effort. It's not a us versus them. We'll see how you do kind of a relationship. It's a let's work together and let's accomplish some great things. And when you get the right partner, which, whether it's us or another group or whether it's working with a firm like yours, Dan, there's some amazing things that can be accomplished. So I'm proud to say that you guys work with us, and
likewise.
I'm excited to dive in. So without further ado, the topic of today, this is something that comes up, I would say, in the vast majority of the conversations that I have initially with attorneys, with marketing groups, with SEOs. It's case types and keywords. And we're gonna spend some time on the organic side of life today. And by the way, this is not saying that this doesn't spill over into the paid advertising world, but for today's specific topic, I want to talk about knowing what to target to produce the types of cases that you're trying to go after. And this can be a very interesting problem for a lot of firms. It's unless you're an agency who has been doing internet marketing for 10 plus years, and you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of firms, and you have all this data and all this research, and you've culled the data and you've extracted exactly what to target to go get the right types of cases. Well, you're kind of shooting in the dark, honestly. And most people are. They're going, well, I'm a personal injury attorney. I happen to reside in the beautiful state of New York, and I want to go after this. So it is much more complex than that. But the truth is, and what I hope to accomplish in today's podcast, is to break down that it can actually be simple. You just need to know what you're looking for and how to set the right goals, manage those expectations, and accomplish something great, but you just have to be careful about how you walk that path. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, if that's good with you.
Yeah, man.
And
yeah, man, let's dig into it. And I love, what you said about how it actually is possible. And we're gonna talk about a little bit later on about what kind of budget you might expect to compete on, say, personal injury lawyer in New York City. That's pretty insane. But I think it's important for people to have context. But I also, as you know, and I know you share this with me, one of the things I love about this show and, the work that we're doing together is that, I want to be clear that there is a path for small firms. There's a path for mid-sized firms. There's a path for the little guy to take on the big boys. And that's the most fun that you can have in marketing, I think. And I want to dig into that today a little bit more. I think that's badass.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And that, I think, on the previous shows that we did, we talked about that, how you can compete with the bigger firms. If you're just starting out, you're a brand new firm, or you just broke off, from a big firm, and you don't have the reviews, you don't have the budgets, you don't have those things. Those aren't that's not your battleground. You need to change the where you're trying to battle these guys.
Yep.
And that's the key. It's tackle them on different areas that they can't compete with. Well, guess what? If you have a firm with 20 attorneys and an unlimited budget for marketing and advertising to go get as many cases as you want, you're also going to have a lot of pissed off people.
Yes.
Because maybe your intake isn't solid. Maybe the case managers aren't getting back to people regularly. Well, you can compete with them on the side of yeah, exactly. Be better with your communication. Give them your cell phone number. Say, listen, you can get the big firm experience from an attorney like myself, but I will actually return your call.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about doing something a little bit different? Now, I know that one's been said a million times, and I know it's kind of cliche at this point, but seriously, you just want to pick your battles and where you're trying to, find your little niche. What is that for you?
Yeah. If you can't compete on anything else, you can always compete on experience. And I'm not talking about, your professional experience. I'm talking about the experience that you offer your clients and your potential clients. So well said. You, not me. But I wanted to kind of open the conversation today, getting back to what you were talking about with SEO and where do you start? If you're getting started in SEO or you're looking for opportunities in content marketing, say, for instance, I'm a small to mid-sized firm. I don't have a huge budget, but I'm really starting to look at SEO and content marketing as a space in which I want to compete. Where do I start? So what is really the first conversation you're having with a potential client that comes to you and says, Brandon, I need help. I'm, maybe on page 4 or 5. I'm on page 3, maybe. And, I know we have an opportunity, but I really don't know where to begin. And, like you said earlier, the big boys are pouring tens of thousands of dollars into SEO, and I don't know how to compete. Where do you start?
Yeah. Great question. It is probably one of the more common questions that I get, especially when a campaign is, sitting on page 4 or 5. But the challenge is, and what I challenge people with is page 4 or 5 for what? Your name? For New York personal injury attorney? For, some obscure term? Like what is that goal? Is the only goal to go after things like these big sexy terms like New York personal injury attorney? Is that really what you need and want? Well, guess what? If you are top of page 1 for New York personal injury attorney, you better have a massive intake team. You better have the ability to, handle a huge caseload potentially and vet all kinds of cases. So it really just depends on what your goals are and where you are today for a lot of things and where your firm is at. Is it just you? Is it you and a partner and an associate? Is it you plus a paralegal? What's the scenario? What is the current landscape of your situation? So I like to dive right into the tough questions on that. I like to know, are we going after those big terms like New York personal injury attorney, or are we going to go after the more obscure? I was at Grand Central Station and I slipped and broke my wrist. Well, guess what? People type that kind of thing in. That is a search term, a real search term that has produced a real case. I've even had them get so granular down to where they say what bus line they were on or what subway they took specifically.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I was on the L going from here to here and I tripped. and you're like, you can't optimize for things like that.
Right.
You can't, have a page of content dedicated to the L train from blah to blah. It just doesn't exist. That doesn't work. But, otherwise your site would be 20 million pages. But how to know where to spend your time and where to invest the money that you have and the efforts that you have to create the best return on that money.
Yeah.
So some of those determining factors for me, like when I'm first speaking to someone, I say, okay, well, let's talk budget for a minute. Great. How aggressive do you want to be? $2,000. If that's what your whole marketing budget is, let's not even get close to New York personal injury attorney.
Yeah.
Let's just stay away from that term altogether. There's no harm in having it on the site, but if that is our primary focus, you are going to hate me.
So I want to stop you real quick right there. So yeah, $2,000 is not going to, get you on page 1 for New York personal injury lawyer for sure. But,
yep.
What, just by way of curiosity for shits and giggles, what might a firm that is competing on that term organically expect to pay per month to an agency for SEO? Just in your professional experience, that you've been doing this a long time. Just again, I don't think a lot of our listeners are probably going to be in that area. I'm not in that area. I'm not in that ballpark of spend. But what might someone expect to pay to compete organically on New York personal injury lawyer?
That is a very, very hot seat question for you to ask any agency, right? It is something we shy away from because we don't want to answer that question.
Okay.
Give
me the easiest way out that I can offer you is give me a range.
I want to actually talk about this
okay.
for 1 second because I come from a massive agency background
yes.
where it's almost like a secret. Like don't tell anyone how much it really takes to accomplish a New York personal injury lawyer, ranking. Don't actually say it. Here's what our package is that we think fits your firm's situation.
Yeah,
right?
and I want to stop real quick too. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify for listeners out there that when I ask that question, I'm not saying that you invest 50, 100 grand, whatever it might be, and you get there overnight. SEO is a long game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I'm not talking about how long it's going to take. I'm talking about how much you can reasonably expect to, invest into SEO in the long run per month, maybe, to compete on those terms. So just throwing that out there. I'm not, if I were your client, I would not be saying, how much do I have to spend to rank on those terms tomorrow? It would be,
I think, yeah. Well, you can't, okay. It's a more complicated answer, but again, I'm going to try and just break this down simply. There are 44,500,000 results. 44,500,000 results for just the term New York personal injury attorney. Great. 44 million.
It's insane.
And those are, and there are thousands of law firms all vying for that one chance to be on page 1 organically in the map. Obviously there are different things that Google allows you to do with, the local pack, like the map, the Google My Business section, the local service ads at the top, which you can run and spend money on, the paid advertisements. But ignoring all those things to organically get there, I think we should have that conversation. I think we should say, what does it actually take? And the answer is, it depends on where you're starting. That's the first thing. If Dan Bryan comes to me and says, hey, Brandon, I just passed the bar. I am ready to rock and roll. I'm going to ask you how deep your daddy's pockets are.
Oh, and I was going to say, it'll be a long time from now. You'll hear me say I passed the bar. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
The thing seems tough.
Just as an example. And the reality is, to answer that question, it depends on where you start. But let's just say, and we're gonna role play this a little bit. Let's say you've had a website. Let's say you were with one of the big groups out there for many, many years, and you've got a good, healthy size site. You've got a site that's got 50 pages of content, some good blogs, some social. You got all the basics, right? You got everything kind of set. Great. And you come to me and say, okay, Brandon, I want to go after New York personal injury attorney / lawyer, either one or together. They're synonymous. They get interchanged, at least in the search results. But you want to go after that as your primary goal. You have to look at the gap between where you are now and all the firms that are up there on page 1 and page 2. That gap analysis and looking at things like, and I'm going to go into the weeds here for a second, but looking at things like, okay, how many links do you have? Great. Is it a quality or a quantity link situation? You have to determine that too, which is it's a little bit complex, but you go, okay, what are all of the highly valuable links based on things like domain authority and domain ranking that are pointing to all my competitors that I don't have? Good. Step 1.
I love that.
I want a spreadsheet. I want an actual spreadsheet showing me where we are today, where our links are, and where theirs are. And what does that look like? Good. Step 1. Now we know. And if you were to cost and break down the actual expense it would take to either outreach to get those links organically, like the right way, like doing, creating quality pieces of content, submitting them, reaching out to these guys, asking them to either link back to you based on the quality and value you're bringing to them, or whether it's a pay to play, and there's many, 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 many options out there for that. I don't want to be arrested by Google, but there's a lot of groups out there that will do that on your behalf.
Yeah. And pay to play, just, to be clear, pay to play is not always black hat. It can be squeaky clean as well.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the most reputable, groups in the space is Thomson Reuters, in the legal marketing space, right? They've been around for a long time. Them and maybe like Martindale Hubble, they all have pay to play services. Thomson Reuters bought Super Lawyers, which was a, one of those fun badges we were talking about before.
Yep.
But you pay into it to get it.
Yeah.
So, all right, setting that aside. So you've got this gap, this linking gap. Next, you have to look at the content gap. You go, good. I've got my site, which we established was about 50 pages of good, solid content. I've got, my average length of page is, 1,200 words. I've got some internal linking going on, going from like, I reference car accident on one page, and then I reference slip and fall on another page, and the internal linking needs to be in a good ratio as well. So that's another kind of factor you want to look at. And you go, I've got 50, they've got 16,000. Okay, is it just volume or is it quality? So I will tell you this, those guys that are ranking page 1 for New York personal injury attorney, do you think that's the only thing they rank page 1 for?
No.
Of course not, right? So they are diverse in their keyword sets, right? Their keyword sets are very, very diverse, and they've got, you can do this research, and I'll share some of these, research tools that I use and how I kind of determine what keyword overlaps we have and that kind of stuff, and common terms we're going after and stuff. But I'll share that later on. But, analyzing that gap on content is also really important. And if your only focus is things like New York personal injury attorney, New York personal injury lawyer, New York personal injury law firm, and you're really stuck on making sure that we rank for that keyword set, totally fine. You actually can accomplish it, but you're going to have to invest so heavily on that one term that you're going to probably ignore, 90% of what else is out there.
Yeah.
There's the longer tailed side of life, right? And that's something that a lot of SEO groups, tout as the better way to do it. It's going after the lower hanging fruit. It's the easier to accomplish and rank for terms that won't get the volume, but the keyword difficulty is far lower. It is, by a factor of like let's say there is a scale called keyword difficulty. Ahrefs uses it, Moz uses it, everyone uses keyword difficulty. And that is what you want to establish. So I realize I just rambled on for a bunch of things. I'm talking about that gap, and there's a lot more to cover there, but I'll kick it back over to you.
No, it's so good. I love everything you're saying. And one thing that, I wanted to add, you're talking about these long tail keywords and how, those might be some really quick wins, low hanging fruit. The cool thing about the long tail keywords too is that, you were talking about the L train, or I tripped on the subway, or, whatever someone might be searching for that is super granular and super specific. A lot of times those are the highest intent, and those keywords convert at a much higher rate than some of those core keywords, even something like, Raleigh car accident lawyer, for instance. If you're saying like car accident lawyer for a hit and run accident, not at fault. I mean, that is going to be a much higher intent, probably more likely to convert keyword than even something, as specific as car accident lawyer. So there's a big difference too, in terms of the user psychology behind these search terms and how easy it may or may not be for a firm to pick a case up based on that keyword. And like you said, those long tail keywords, the advantage is, you may not be getting the volume on those, but they're a hell of a lot easier to pick up.
You couldn't have said it any better. I like to use blogs for a lot of that too, right? It's stuff that, you're going to talk about a specific story, and that person on the L train who did break their wrist, and that Raleigh car accident or the hit and run accident that, was a little bit more detail oriented. Excuse me. I love to use blog and social for stuff like that, and not have that be my primary keyword set on my primary pages where I'm driving most of my traffic to. And it's interesting because you can, if you wanted to, you could have, 10,000 keywords that you're going after. Again, the conversation always goes back to, what are the expectations? Because also timeline has a lot to do with this too. If I asked you, Dan, I'm like, all right, so you came to me with your firm, the 50-page firm, you've been out there for a while, you've been with a couple groups, great. What is your timetable on this? Like, do you have I need this done in the next 12 months? And if that's the case, I may just say no, because you have to be in or willing to take the necessary steps to close that gap. If you haven't closed that gap and you're expecting it to happen, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Sorry.
And once you close the gap, you have to expect to invest consistently over time to keep it. I mean, SEO is not a, we build the house and we're done. It's we build the house and then you have to maintain it. You got to keep the walls painted. You got to keep the HVAC system up and running. I mean, everything requires investment over time. This is not a one and done situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's almost like a NASCAR race, right? Everyone's going. You got to go catch them. They're already 9 laps in. You go catch them, and then you catch them, and then you let off the gas at that point. I'm sorry. The answer is no, because you're not dropping in rankings. They're passing you in rankings. That's the difference, and kind of a mindset shift that a lot of people don't realize. They're like, oh well, I was on page 1 for 8 years, and I'm like, and then what did you do? Oh, you didn't add any linking, you didn't add any additional quality content that was interacted with. You let them close the gap on you, and then you took your foot off the gas. Yeah. Absolutely rookie mistake. Yeah. Come on, we got to step up the numbers, guys.
Yeah, I want to jump back really quick to the long tail conversation that we're having, because it's interesting to me. Like we've both said, you can compete on these longer tail keywords, and per keyword, it's a hell of a lot smaller investment in terms of time and budget that you have to put into going after those. But the question then becomes scale, right? So you were saying earlier at the very beginning of this conversation, you obviously can't have a separate page or blog post for injury suffered while on the L train in the subway or whatever. I mean, it's just impossible. You would never have the time or resources or budget to create pages that specific at scale. So how do you compete, at scale for long-term keywords? How do you, go about doing that? Is it a question of identifying the right ones first and then hitting those hard? Or what would you recommend to a firm that says, okay, you've convinced me that I can't compete, say, on New York personal injury lawyer, but I do want to go after these longer-term keywords. Where do you start with that strategy?
Good question. And let me say this to hedge a little bit. You can compete on New York personal injury lawyer. You have to be ready for the budget.
Oh yeah. And we're going to get to that big number. I'm going to hold you to it. I know you don't, I know you say
we're going to wrap this with what that magic number
is. Yeah. We're going to keep folks on the edge of their seats.
I love it. It's a little cliffhanger, but yeah. So I'm a fan of doing keyword research on things that people are actively searching for. And you can use different keyword research tools like Ahrefs has one, Moz has one, SpyFu is another really good one that has one. There are some like really fun ones out there that most people haven't heard of, like Jaxi.
Oh, cool.
That one's awesome. You get all these, you plug in some keywords, you get tons of related searches. You can also use Google's keyword research tool as well, which, you know, has its advantages and disadvantages. But what you're looking for is things that people are actively typing in to answer questions that they have. And so for those longer tailed search terms, you know, the FAQ, the traditional FAQs that everyone had, the how much is it going to cost me to hire an attorney, right? Those are played. Everyone has them. It's the same content. It's all duplicative. It's all common content that everyone has. But going after, you know, if you slipped and fell at, you know, on X, you know, ramp of X train, or you were in an accident in this neighborhood, this intersection or something like that, and went really granular and did the keyword research, that data is available. You can go take that and draw that in and go, people are searching and asking this question in different boroughs of New York or different cities in your market within a county that you serve. You know, you can do some really, really awesome, effective, and inexpensive ranking by just going after those commonly asked questions.
Yeah.
Things that, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, and a lot of those commonly asked questions, those FAQs, those very specific, granular, long tail keywords, they don't require 1,000-word page or blog post. I mean, those can be answered much more succinctly. And because, you know, you may be the only firm going after those terms, you know, Google's not necessarily going to penalize you for lighter content there. Is that right? Or am I just talking out my ass?
No, I think you're right. I don't, you know, no one can say definitively 100% yes, because I'm sure there's some, you know, some example somewhere that,
I'm sure
that showed something to the contrary, but we're going off the numbers on a macro level. And yeah, I think you're right. And I'm a fan of, you know, using those commonly asked questions or even kind of obscure questions that could produce a really good case. You know, you get people who search so randomly, like the most weird stuff, because it's streaming consciousness in their brain, and they are not conditioned to search the way that guys like you and I are. We are professional searchers. That's what we are. We, like, you go dig through my search history. Please don't. You go dig through my search history, and you're going to see, you know, very, very interesting things and nuances that I use because I know what I'm looking for. And I also know what I'm trying to trigger in the index to give me what I want. And most people, like, you know, I go ask my 18-year-old daughter, I'm like, hey, and by the way, I use her as a sounding board all the time. I'm like, hey, if this happened to you, what would you look for? Just randomly, just as a random question. She'd be like, oh, I don't know, maybe blah. And she knows what I do for a living. She's been around it her whole life. And she'll give me stuff. And I'm like, how on earth did you think that would get you what you wanted? But all we're obsessed with online and all that, you know, these internet marketing companies are pushing is this, let's go after those big, sexy terms, or go after really obscure, easy to rank for things. So I can just say, hey, I did my job. Yay, yay. That's the goal is, how do we get you the cases you need to grow your firm so then you can get to your longer term goals? Because if the short term goals are, let's go rank for some long tail terms, you know, some easier, some lower hanging fruit. Let's go after the, you know, I was, you know, rear-ended, you know, in downtown Raleigh. Well, guess what? That term, rear-ended in downtown Raleigh, I'll bet you the keyword difficulty on that's pretty low.
Pretty low.
Relative to Raleigh personal injury attorney or Raleigh car accident lawyer. And that's where I really want people to focus on. Let's grab some stuff that you can realistically accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. Go get that success. That may not be the one that gets you all the cases you want. You may need more.
Right.
You may need to go after not 5 long tail terms, but 15, 25, 30, 50 even. But that's okay. You know, that is the game. And when you're getting into SEO, you got to realize that you're getting into a process. You're getting onto the track. you're hitting the gas and you're going to keep racing. You got your pit crew, and that's what we are, right?
But to be
keeping that car on the track.
For sure. And to be clear, so listeners know, I mean, when we're talking about going after a long tail keyword like injured in downtown Raleigh, that would require, I think I'm hearing you say that would require a unique page or a unique blog post. Is that generally your best recommendation, or are there other things that a firm can do to go after those long tail keywords?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do for sure. If your content is inclusive enough, if let's say your car accident page of content is inclusive enough and does have that and different, varieties of terms on it that you're kind of diversifying. So it's not just like Raleigh car accident lawyer, Raleigh, and just repeating the same, message, 75 times on the page, which we all hate, but, think it's the right thing to do for the search engines. I think you can do that, but you also have to realize there's more factors than just the words on the page, right? It's what's linking to them. Is there any traffic being driven? Let's say you wrote a blog article about that, not one that you necessarily posted on your site, but maybe it got picked up by some other resource, some other, legal directory, a NOLO, one of these directories out there that will let, writers post on their behalf and then link back to themselves.
Yeah.
And you get that picked up, and that one happens to be rear-ended in downtown Raleigh. Guess what? And you point that back to your page, your car accident page. Well, you got some juice there. You got some link flow. It's going to happen most likely because the keyword difficulty is low enough. The threshold is low enough where one asset like that pointing back could make that page jump to page one.
Nice. Yeah.
So interesting.
That's so great. And I think that just reminds me, I think for a future pod, we really need to dig into some of those online directories and what's possible out there, because like you just said, there's a real opportunity. I think that's a missed opportunity by a lot of attorneys out there to dig into the FAQ sections on those websites and answer, real PC, potential client questions that people are asking on there. I know some firms have had a lot of success doing that with, I think Avo does that, and there's a few others out there that do it, maybe NOLO, like you said. But yeah, we should dig into that sometime too.
Yeah, it's, I spend a lot of my time on those. And when you're doing your own gap analysis of like where you are versus, let's say the firm that the attorney just hates and wants to compete with and wants to, go after, when you're doing that gap analysis, pay special attention to the legal industry directories because of their relevance, because of their weight. They may not be they may not be like a domain authority 99, like Forbes is or something like that. Totally fine. But it's very relevant.
Yeah.
And you can pick up search traffic from it too, because they may outrank you for different terms locally. You do a search in, Raleigh, let's just say, since we're talking about that, Avo may be up there for that.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
And they focused heavily on that Q&A. That was a big thing for them back in the day. And I know they still do it, but encouraging attorneys to jump on Avo and do Q&A and come in there and answer legal questions, ask an attorney X and then answer those questions. And so if they rank there, you happen to be listed there and you picked up that directory to make sure that you've closed that gap on the linking side of what your competitors have, you stand a good chance to get that traffic too.
It's great. Yeah, I think the real lesson of all of this conversation is really that SEO, SEO for law firms is a nuanced game. And I don't think that you can apply a one-size-fits-all strategy to any particular firm, practice area, location, that kind of thing. And you mentioned it, or you alluded to it a little bit earlier. But one thing that I just cannot stand is when an SEO agency, and God, I get probably 10 emails a day asking me if they can do an SEO audit on our site. That's the real entree. That's the entry point for so many of these firms. And that's great. But, let's say I do that. I let a firm dig into our site, tell me what's going on and their opinion. Then I get a menu of, say, 1, 2, or 3 options, and they're tiered. And it's almost like, okay, you have good, better, and best is how it's pitched to you. But what's included in those menu options may or may not, be specific to my market or specific to my unique situation. And I don't know. I may be going off on a tangent here, but I just cannot stand that.
I come from a world where that's just common practice. Like that's what they do. I personally hated it because it wasn't any real insight into what was going on. It's here our scraper is going to scrape the things that we think we can then pitch you on to then get you into a package to then go, oh, hey, Dan, your page speed is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to convert your site. I'm going to switch over your whole campaign. I'm going to fix your page speed by a second or two. And then I did my job. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So don't buy into the scrapers, the guys who are like, oh, we'll do the assessment. And by the way, some of them are totally fine.
Oh, absolutely. You and I know, my background is in the agency world, and I have a great deal of respect for many agencies, of course, yours included, but there are many that are doing it right. And I'm not dogging on the SEO audit necessarily because it can be a very valuable tool. And there are a lot of firms that do it right. I'm just saying, I think, for listeners out there, for legal marketers that are tuned in, I think it's a serious red flag when an SEO agency, or for that matter, any digital marketing agency, presents you with a very set, specific, inflexible menu of choices for you to choose from. This is something that is far more nuanced and requires a lot more finesse than 3 options. And I think that's a red flag.
I agree. And it's so tough. Like I feel for the agencies and being one myself and living it day to day, there's only so much bandwidth that you have. So, Brandon has to surround himself with the right people to help with all of these different pieces, the content piece, the linking piece, the relationship piece, the social media piece, which we didn't even touch on today, and we can save that for another time. But there's only so much bandwidth that these people have. And so for the bigger companies, for the bigger agencies, they struggle because they can't scale. It's hard to scale people. It's hard to scale badasses in the space. Like the agency that I come from, there are some of the best people. I love them. They are brilliant minds. But if they get stuck with 100 campaigns that they have to manage, how do you do that? Just how do you actually do that and give the necessary attention that each of these campaigns needs? The answer is you can't.
Yeah.
So you add more people and you add more people and you add more people, and then training them. And because there is, which Dan, maybe I think you would be fitted for this. Maybe you should start a college for all things digital marketing, the University of SEO and PPC. But
don't get me too excited. Don't get me too excited. Get me too excited. I'm an impulsive guy.
The Bryan College of Internet Marketing.
I love it. I love it, man. I love
it too. You should do it.
All right.
It's I'll come teach a class.
Challenge accepted. We'll see what happens.
It could be good, but there is no real and you'll see all these different advertisements for internet marketing classes and different things, and it's starting to become a thing. You can actually get a degree in internet marketing. I feel like we came from the school of hard knocks where you had to just learn it yourself and evolve with the ever changing landscape.
Thank you for saying that. I've worked hard to get here.
Man, honestly, me too.
Yeah, I know it. Well, it's funny you say that because I'm in Chapel Hill, and actually UNC Chapel Hill, a very good school, I have seen is now offering a certificate program in digital marketing. So, it's all over the place.
It's going to become a thing. It's a huge marketplace. Every single industry that's gone online, which at this stage in the game, pretty much everyone is going to, and it is just so big, but it's hard to find people that are not only educated, but then have the experience, to back it. Right. So, you go to college, you're like, oh, I want to be an internet marketing major. You're like, is that a thing? That's not even a thing, but I guess it's a thing now.
And I do think it should be. I do think it should be.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before. I'm an English major, and so I was sort of forced into this field. But that's not to say that I regret it. I think it's turned out really well. But yeah, we're off on a tangent here, but absolutely, do I think that digital marketing should be something that's offered at the undergraduate level and of course beyond. I think it's important. It's just
coming.
Yeah, it's just
honestly.
relevant.
Yeah, 100%. what makes it tough is the old cliche about, by the time you wrote a book on SEO, you might as well burn it because it's not going to be valid, right? It's a constantly changing market, and so the bullseye is always moving, and you go, well, okay, how do you live in that space? And that I think is the biggest complicated, kind of quirky bit about what we do is committing yourself to something that you're going to have to change every single month, every single week.
Yep.
Always here with the latest update, like Google's local service ads, which is a huge disruptive, game-changing thing that they rolled out for the legal space. They rolled it out for home services a while back, a couple years ago to test it. And guess what everyone was struggling with? Well, you had to get a background check. Some people didn't want to. Some people were like, I got to give Google all of my information and permission to go scrub my entire life history. It's kind of scary.
Well, to be fair, we've given Google pretty much everything else already.
What I tell my attorneys is they already have it.
Yeah.
They trust me, you're not that important. They don't care.
Yeah.
And if they wanted something on you,
they'll get it.
I'm pretty sure they have it.
They'll Google it.
Well, the funny thing is they just rolled out, yesterday, the day before, that you no longer need background checks, because if you're an attorney, you're already vetted for the most part by your local bar, and you no longer need background checks.
That is funny. I didn't even think of that, but that's certainly true.
Funny is one word for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, man. I mean, and getting back to just the ever-changing nature of this, if I were to try to write a long-term bestseller, I would not do it on SEO. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Neither would I. It's it is a wild space, but it's very, very lucrative. It is one of the most effective ways to build a business.
Yeah.
And the SEO side should be, over a long enough period of time, it should be the most profitable part of your internet marketing budget.
Fully agree.
Honestly. And I firmly believe that. I will argue that toe to toe with anyone. I know all the PPC guys, the social guys,
Fully agree.
The advertising guys. They're like, no, it's SEO is dead. Well, it's not, and it's not going away. It has been definitely pushed lower and lower on the page because Google wants to make as much money as possible. But there's so many things you can do to get yourself into a spot where you're turning your SEO into a massive growth channel for your firm.
I was going to say, and I am 100% with you. I think that SEO, if you can create a finely tuned machine, it can 100% be the most profitable aspect of your business, particularly for law firms. At the same time, as you mentioned, you have LSAs, you have PPC, the traditional PPC ads, on the SERP. Do you think that we will get to a point in time? And I mean, those things take up now damn near a third, or even at some points half of the page, if you include like the local map pack and that, which is organic, but not necessarily, like the actual search results. Do you think we'll get to a point in time where page one will be damn near impossible to rank for organically, simply because page one won't necessarily even exist anymore on the organic side?
I think it's a relative question to the terms that you're looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could maybe get there eventually, long enough period of time, but there's so many varying search terms. The big glory ones that get the vast majority of the search traffic, those are going to be tougher and tougher because the gap keeps widening.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So it's like you're going to get into the space, you start picking off the easier to manage keywords that you can kind of build this groundswell, start getting cases and whatever. You'll eventually be in a position where you're like, I've made enough money, I've got enough kind of bandwidth and, let's say momentum on my site where now I can go after the big boys. I've got the budget to do it. I've got the team to do it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always going to be something you can do. You just have to go about it intelligently. And yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, because you said, I've got the budget to do it. I'm ready to go after the bad boys. And unfortunately, Brandon, you just reminded me of, the number one question that everyone is waiting for, I think, which is, how much is it going to cost me to compete on New York personal injury lawyer?
Organically, if I was just going to put a number on it, I would say probably in the $20,000 a month range is probably right between
Okay.
the link outreach, between the content, the constant content push and strategy, like the time that gets spent on these campaigns. And this gets lost on a lot of people. And I'm not just saying this because we do a lot of SEO work. Doing this by hand and building these campaigns from scratch, the time is in the research.
Yeah.
And how do you quantify it? It's so hard. Be like, oh, give me $10,000 a month to run your SEO campaign. You're going to get 5 links. You're going to get 5 blogs. You're going to get 5 social posts, and then trust the process.
Yep.
Right? It's so hard. And then you'll have guys be like, oh, well, tell me how much time you spent. Well, as you're doing all this research and looking at the competitors and what they're ranking for, and maybe links that fell off of their site that you can go pick up. And that's a whole nother conversation that we should tackle someday, is just, linking strategies and
absolutely
the wild world that is backlinking. And it's, I'd say, 20 grand is probably a good number for it, just in terms of effort that needs to go into it. If you were starting from scratch, I would say the only way to shorten the timeline it's going to take you to get there, because it could take a very long time. It could take years.
Yeah.
Honestly, but you have to be invested in that. And in my opinion, you have to diversify your spend. You have to. And this is something that I preach to all of my clients. If you're only going New York personal injury attorney, you're going for the glory. You're going for glory, right? Mm-hmm. It's, no guts, no glory. Here we go, all the way. We're all in. Here's $20,000 a month. But you don't have budget for social. You don't have budget for local service ads, or for paid advertising, or running any other type of marketing or advertising. I would say that's going to be a very, very tough bill to pay month after month after month. And that's where I don't recommend doing it. Have some diversification of spend, be in more places that people can find you. I like to get some instant gratification, which is why I am a fan of running paid advertising. Not exclusively running it, because once the budget's gone, you're gone, kind of a thing. You have no lasting staying power in the space. Yeah. So for me, there's always been different ratios. 2/3 SEO, 1/3 PPC, or 1/3 search engine optimization, 2/3 paid advertising. Whatever that is for you, whatever's right. There is an interesting balance that you have to find.
Yeah, and I think even once you rank number 1, God willing, that's no reason to stop running PPC. So I love what you said about diversification, because, in my background, where I come from, I come from a search marketing agency background, and the goal is always to own as much of that SERP as you can.
That's right.
And so, if you can afford it, by all means, even if you're ranking number 3, number 2, number 1, hopefully, I always say, if you have the budget, you need to be running, paid as well. You want to own as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I've got, countless, studies that have been done on this, where if you're on the first page in more than one spot, the multipliers are out of this world. Like, the click-through rates just jump, the impression share, and everything else that you're basically competing for. You just get into this next level of traffic. You're going to get so much more if you can rank not only one spot, but 2 or 3 spots. Yeah. That's why I like to do it. It's something that I definitely encourage my clients to do, is have some diversity in spend, make sure you're tapping into multiple channels, and then all your eggs aren't in one basket either, which is always nice.
For sure. Well, we have tackled so much today. Very excited about it. I think we've come away with a lot of hopefully actionable things that people can put into play, right now at their firms. And I did get that question out of you. I'm very proud of myself right now. Got it out. So mission accomplished there. Thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. I should say too, I should have said it at the beginning. I talk about SEO. Like I said, I come from a search marketing agency background. But really, as I think you've heard, Brandon is the expert on this. And I know, he would love to talk with any of y'all offline, about SEO and, strategy for, keyword research and that gap analysis. I think it's great. And so thank you again so much, Brandon, for being on today. I said it before and I'll say it again. You will be back. I think we've already come up actually today with like 3 or 4 other topics that we need to get into.
I think we did.
So we're just keeping ourselves in business here.
That's right. That's right. Well, Dan, thanks for having me. It's always fun. This is kind of something that I have a burning desire to always kind of dive into and tackle. And I like to fix these problems for guys. So it's, as you can probably tell, it's my passion. It's my business. This is what I live and breathe. So Dan, anytime you want to have me on to talk about something that I love, next time maybe we'll talk about baseball.
Fantastic. Oh, you do not want to talk baseball with me. I know you're a Dodgers fan, but I come from a family that loves baseball, and we would go to games all the time. I like the live experience. And I'm a Tigers man at heart, but I like the live experience, but I don't know much about it. I'm pathetic.
I'll take you to a game soon.
Fantastic. I hope we can do that. Thank you so much, Brandon. I want to mention to anyone out there, this is obviously something that has been developed by Marketing for Justice. I'm so glad to spotlight Wingman Marketing as well that Brandon is from. If any of y'all have questions for either of us, please feel free to reach out. You can go to marketingforjustice.com or mywingmananytime.com and check out all of the resources that are there, and of course reach out to us if you should see fit. I want to say just real quick that Marketing for Justice does offer online workshops in all things digital marketing for legal marketers specifically. We're just focused on law firm marketing, and you can go to our website to check out what's coming up next. I think next workshop is actually focused on full funnel UX for law firms, so I think that's going to be a really cool conversation, and I would love to dig into that topic specifically with you on another pod, Brandon, if you were willing.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
For sure. Thanks, Dan.
Good deal. Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. And thank you, Brandon. And we'll be back at it soon.
Thanks, guys.